I am back with another Prove It Basic Strategy video for you. This is where we play out a certain hand 100 times the way that Basic Strategy says, and then another 100 times the way that a ploppy or a non-card counter might play it. In this case, we're playing with a pair of twos versus a dealer's two. And so from a 6-deck shoe over here, I have two of hearts, you might say. And so I'm going to stick those out here for us. And the way that we're going to do this is, let's say that this is going to be the non-card counter. They're just going to hit their pair of twos, which is incorrect according to Basic Strategy. And we're going to hopefully see at the end of this why over here, the Basic Strategy guy, why splitting is actually the correct decision on a pair of twos versus a dealer's two. Okay, a couple things with this. I have 40 chips for each of our people out here. Again, the non-card counter, the one who's going to be hitting, which is incorrect according to Basic Strategy. They have 40 reds. And over here, the green is going to be splitting, which is what Basic Strategy says. The reason why there's different colors is because we can kind of distinguish them better, but don't think of them in terms of 25 and 5, just greens and reds, because I need to split with this particular person, and they're going to have 2 chips out as opposed to my hitter, which is just going to have 1 chip when they go to hit. All right, so because of that, the chip count at the end of this video is going to be really important to see who has more chips at the end of playing it 100 hands one way versus 100 hands the other way. Now, I'm not going to be playing all 100 hands out here for you in a really long video. I'm going to do about maybe the first 5. Then we're going to throw it into a hyper-lapse, and that way I don't waste your whole day for the other 95 hands. At the end, we'll come back with the results. You can see exactly what that's going to be. So with that said, let's get to those first 5 hands. Before I do that, I guess though, I'm going to take the first chunk of my cards and just give them a nice shuffle. That way it's going to mess up all the other cards behind it, so you know I'm not rigging this in any way. I did shuffle the whole thing before this video, but you're not here to watch me shuffle. You're here to see the cards played out. So first thing we have to do, of course, is give the dealer their whole card. So let's do that. And then for my my non-card counter, my non-Basic Strategy person, they're just going to hit their pair of twos. So currently they're obviously at a 4. Right, if I hit and get a 9, now they're at 13, which would be a stand. So everything after that, they are going to play Basic Strategy. Then they would stand on their 13. So now I have to remember that they have 13, because now I'm also going to shift these same cards over, because I want to use kind of same cards in those same order coming out as what the hitter would do versus, have you ever wondered, well, what if I would have hit that, compared to what Basic Strategy says, well, what if I do Basic Strategy and actually split here? Now this is interesting. One reason that you do want to split this, I'm glad we got this as the first card, is because if double after split is allowed, you actually do split your twos against the dealer's 2 and 3. Whereas in a non-DAS or a non-double after split game, Basic Strategy says you shouldn't. And so this is one reason why I think it's going to be really beneficial to split, because this of course calls for a double down now. All right, and so now we have 19 for that first 2. The second 2, we get 12. 12 versus dealer's 2 is actually a hit. Nice, and look at that, we have 21. So of course we're going to stand there. Dealer has 12, 15, and too many. So in both cases, because the dealer busted, we are both winners. But this guy got 3 chips out there, so they're going to win 3 chips, whereas this one, of course, would have only won 1. Remember, if I kind of bring this back, my twos, they weren't split, they're just hit, and we hit to get a 9. And because the dealer busted either way, they won that particular one. So over here on my charts, let me kind of show this here for you. I'll pop it a little bigger for you on the screen. In both cases, they are winners. So I'm going to say 1 win using tally marks here. And then eventually this is going to be filled up. Here's kind of an example of a different one we did. And it'll look something like that with a bunch of tally marks. Okay. By the way, I have a whole playlist of these different ones. You can see all the different ones I've done on this. I've done about 15 of them now, I think. And so if you're interested in seeing how these different hands have been played out over these 100 hands, you can check that out. All right, so that was the first hand. Let's try hand number 2. I'm going to stack up the wins here like that. Go back to resetting our cards, keeping those same. So I took all the cards away except for the hearts. Got to give the dealer their whole card. This guy is just going to hit. Okay, now they have 9, still a hit. and now he can stand on 16. All right, now I am going to bring these cards over like this. All right, now since the first card was a 5, I would still keep hitting over here. All right, and now I'd have 14, which is a stand. This one, also a 5, 10, and another 14, so also stands there. Dealer has 6, 12, and 22. So again, both were winners. However, this guy won 2 chips, where this guy won just 1. So it might look very similar in terms of wins and losses at the end of this little prediction here. However, when this guy wins, they're winning at least double. If there's a double after split, or maybe you get another 2 drawn to split again, they could have potentially even more than double the wins compared to that guy. So that's kind of why I think we're seeing what we are. Now, of course, the opposite is also true. If there's a loss, like if the dealer were to pull to 20 or 21, then they will lose twice as much. So that might come into play as well. All right, stack those over here, just like that. Get the dealer their whole card for the third hand. Again, we're doing about 5 of these, and I'll throw it into a hyperlapse after that. I want you to see some of the situations before we do the hyperlapse. This guy's just going to hit. All right, so they can stand on their, or I'm sorry, that's 12, still a hit, my bad. Now we can stand our 16. Now on this side, we would have split our 2s. These are still the cards coming out in that order. So here, it would have been a double, and then you would have, the next card would have been a 4, so that's 14. Another double, and that time they have 16. Okay, this time dealer has 5, 6, 7, 12, and 18. So look at this. So this was a loss of 4 chips, whereas this guy, if I bring those back, let's see, that was 12, 16. That was also a loss. So this time they're both losses, and that brings us back to about even for both sets of chips there. So loss and a loss, they'll mark up on the chart. Bring back everything except for the 2s. Okay, 1 chip. This guy's gonna have 2 out there. Whole card for the dealer. Just a hit. Okay, 12, again, still a hit. All right, so here's a loss right away for this guy because they busted. So I'm gonna mark that for our ploppy as a loss right away. However, on this side, when they split, again, a 10 versus a dealer's 2, that is a double. All right, and so I do have to get another chip out there, and that time worked out nicely. 12 versus dealer's 2. Now there could potentially be deviations for this if we get deep enough into the shoe. I highly doubt that we're there yet. So this is just gonna hit. I am gonna be playing basic strategy as I'm not counting, just kind of going off basic strategy here. So I'm gonna stand on 19. Dealer has 12, 14, and 17. And so in both cases, those ones are wins for the 19 and the 20. So this time, the basic strategy guy won, but the ploppy lost. All right. Oh, you know what? I already marked up the loss on that one. So I have 1 too many losses. I'll have to wait till the next loss to fix that. Because we got 1 more here, so that's a little bit wrong right now. I forgot that I had already marked it when they busted. Okay. All right, last one before I throw it into a hyperlapse. Got the whole card. This guy's gonna hit. Okay, a 10 is still a hit. 20, nice. They're gonna stand on that. So now they have 20. Over here, let's see, an 8 is still a hit. Now you can stand on 18. Here's a double. And they get 12. Okay. Dealer has 4, 8, 16, and 18. So this one is a loss. That one's a push. And this one was a 20, I believe. So that is a win. Okay. So interesting thing here. Notice that they originally had 3 chips out, but because we lost more than we would have won, even if we would have won that, I still would have taken more chips than I would have given, but this one was a push. So I'm going to call the basic strategy guy a loss, and over here this guy of course won. All right, so that's the first 5 hands or so. The rest of these I am going to throw into a hyperlapse for the next 95. However, before I do that, if you find these interesting, before you just skip to the end and see the results, please give me a thumbs up if you appreciate this kind of content. And also, while you're watching that kind of play through in the hyperlapse, let me know down below, which hand do you want to see played out 100 times? All right guys, I'm back with the results here. I'll go over the numbers here in a second. We'll talk about the chip count and then some things that I noticed in terms of a pair of 2s versus a dealer's 2. But first off, let's check out the actual numbers. This was interesting because the basic strategy person actually won less than the ploppy, who won a few more. Now, you do have to remember this is only 100 hands, which anyone will tell you that is not near enough to get to the long run. However, this series that I've been doing, I say this in every single video, it's kind of for the doubters who doubt basic strategy. This is just to give you a quick snapshot and see, out of these quick 100 hands one way versus 100 the other way, do you start to kind of lean one way versus another? And I'll get into that a little bit more later. But anyway, a few less wins. One thing though is that if we drew another 2, and so we had like 3 2s out here, well, a win, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, you know, if you maybe double down on one and then win the other 2, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 chips that you could potentially win, or sometimes even more if there's other doubles and things after those splits. And so a win for the basic strategy guy could be a way bigger win than simply winning just one additional chip for the ploppy or the guy who just hit his pair of 2s. Okay, so these wins are not treated equally is kind of what I'm saying with that there. The losses, however, were quite a bit less for the basic strategy, so you did lose less in the long run, or in these 100 hands, compared to the ploppy, who did lose quite a bit. Again, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And then pushes to me were, you know, obviously if the dealer and you have the same amount, that is a push, or especially with a split, when there's 2 hands going on, if you win one and lose one, I consider that a push, as the amount of money that you started the hand with versus at the end of the hand was the exact same. All right. So that's why I think there's probably a few more pushes there, as that opportunity to push is a little bit more compared to the push on the hit had to be exactly when the dealer and them had the same hands, okay, or same total at the end. A couple things that I noticed, and so first off is that the losses, a lot of times, let me see if I can get a couple of cards here. Okay, so first off, with our hitter, a lot of times what would happen is they would draw a 10, and a 10 will give them a total of 14. 14 versus the dealer's 2, of course, is going to stand. However, over here, that same 10, remember this, instead of being just a hit, now it's going to split. Well, that same card would have been drawn if they would have split, which is correct according to basic strategy. And now a 12 versus the dealer's 2 is a hit, and therefore they would get another card, and there's only 10 valued cards that would then bust them, which did happen, you know, quite a bit. But it seemed like for every couple of cards that I drew with 10s to get 12 versus the dealer's 2, I would not get another 10. I would get like a 7 or something to get 19, and then I would of course stand on that hand. So you can watch back the footage to see just how often that happened. I already talked about, excuse me, about when you split, you know, if you win one and lose one, that's going to be why there's lots more pushes. And then, yeah, the interesting thing here with the wins almost always came as a result for the hitter guy with dealer busts, okay? And again, sometimes with the other guy, if you have, let's say there's maybe another 2 came out, so it'd be 3. Let's call it just 2 though. And let's say one of them called for a double down. Well, you might win one hand, right? And so then I was giving an additional chip here, but maybe this one did lose. Well, I would call that a loss overall, because the amount of chips that I started with versus ended with, I started with more than what I ended with, and therefore, because I took more chips than I gave, that was a loss. But even though you might have won a particular hand. So another kind of interesting caveat with, you know, by splitting, you might lose one hand, but you might also win another. You might split to multiple 3 or 4 even hands, and so just kind of interesting with that. All right, that's kind of the numbers. Let's talk about the chip count here and just kind of see what was going on with that. And so remember, we started 40 each, and this guy actually ended, the non-basic strategy ended 1 chip less here. So these are 3 piles of 10 and then a pile of 9, and therefore he lost a chip. Okay, again, not necessarily that is negative EV, but just in those 100 hands that I showed you, they happen to lose more than they won. This guy, here's what we started with, and he gained a whole 10, and then 2, 4, 6, 7. So 17 chips up on that. And again, that probably is due to, there was several times where we would split to 3, even 4 hands, get some double downs in those splits, win them all. Well, that's a difference of winning 3 or 4 more compared to just 1 with the other. And that happened, it seemed like, quite a bit. And so again, if you were to do this over 1 million hands, 4 million hands, 400 million, something like that, you might see that these numbers are a little bit closer. I'm not quite sure if it's maybe they'd be further apart, and basic strategy guy would win more. But hopefully this gives you kind of a good sense as to why we can split our 2s, or why we should split our 2s versus dealer's 2. Even if you only get this hand 100 times in your blackjack career from here moving forward, you should end up with way more chips by splitting as opposed to hitting. All right, guys, again, if you like this kind of content, please give me a thumbs up. Additionally, these are all the hands that I have done this for, and you can find that on this playlist right here. Otherwise, until next time, remember, this is A1 Blackjack.